are, another Wednesday night, and we are in the book of Genesis, chapter 40 tonight, chapter 40. That's what we'll be looking at this evening. So grab your Bible, we'll take a look at chapter 40. Now, before we get to chapter 40, we'll recap just a little bit of where we've been. In chapter 39, we've got Joseph, who has been brought down to Egypt and is in Potiphar's house. And Potiphar is an officer of Pharaoh. He's a captain of the guard, and he's an Egyptian. And he buys Joseph from the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites had taken Joseph, and because their brothers sold them to them, and now he's in Potiphar's household. And Potiphar finds out that Joseph is somewhat of a lucky charm. He's a magic charm. He's working in his household, and everything is prospering. And so Potiphar ends up putting him in charge of his whole house, and he doesn't care for anything that's going on. He leaves everything in the charge of Joseph. The only thing Potiphar takes care of is his own physical needs. He takes care of his food. Well, after a while, what happens is Joseph catches the eye of Potiphar's wife. And Potiphar's wife comes along and she tempts him. She wants to have relations with him, right? She wants to have sexual relations with him. And Joseph denies her. He will not give in to that. And it's a daily temptation. Over and over and over again, he gets hit with the same temptation. And he just refuses to give in. Well, at one point, Joseph is in the house with Potiphar's wife. They're alone. Nobody else is with them. She grabs him and says, "Lie with me. Stay with me." And Joseph runs away, and he leaves his cloak there. He leaves his outer garment there in her hand. Now she's angry, she's upset, and she decides, that's it, I've had enough of this. I'm going to hold on to this. I'm going to call to everybody. Look at what this Hebrew has done. Look at what this foreigner has done. He's tried to come in. He's basically tried to rape me. And when Potiphar comes home, she tells him the story, and he's angry. Now, we talked about why he might be angry. There might be multiple reasons, but it is interesting to note that Potiphar does not have Joseph killed. Seems to suggest, at least to me, that maybe Potiphar knew what kind of woman she was. Maybe she had done similar things in the past. It could be. I was talking to someone this past week, and they had come across the possibility that maybe Potiphar was unable, for whatever reason, to be intimate with his wife, and this could be why she was trying to pursue Joseph, and possibly maybe this was a pattern in her life. And so, for whatever reason, Potiphar does not take the life of Joseph. He puts him into prison. And that's where he is left. And we saw that just like when he was in Potiphar's household, when Joseph is in prison, everything prospers. And so the prison warden, you could say, lets Joseph, kind of leaves him alone and lets him be in charge of whatever's going on in the prison, and it all prospers. And so what we saw was God is with Joseph in the midst of all his trials and all his sufferings and all his hardships, regardless of where he's at. Now we might think, this is horrible. Joseph might be thinking, I haven't done anything wrong, and yet I'm still suffering. But God is with him in the midst of his suffering and trials and hardships. All right, so that was 39. So 40, we're going to look at 40, chapter 40. This week what I'd like to do is read the whole chapter first, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about it. So chapter 40, verse 1 says this. It says, "Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. And one night, they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker, of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison. Each his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossoms, shot forth. The clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." And Joseph said to him, "This is its interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you. And please do me this kindness, to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head." Joseph answered and said, "This is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you." On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. All right, so let's ask the question, what is the overall story that we find in this chapter? What is it about? Well, basically what we have 2 servants of Pharaoh. We have a cupbearer and a baker, and they're both imprisoned. Now, what did they do to get thrown into prison? We don't really know. They did something. There was some kind of an offense that we're told about, but we don't know all the details. What we do know is that they're here in prison, and they're in prison with Joseph. Now, the 2 servants of Pharaoh end up having a dream. Each of them has a different dream. There's some similarities, but they each have a different dream. But how long had Joseph been in prison? Well, we aren't given any specifics on the amount of time, are we? It just simply says that some time after this, right? Some time has passed. We're not told exactly how long. Now, we have to remember that Joseph has been in slavery and in prison for a long time. Exactly how long? Not sure. But we know it's a long time. And you know, just being in prison, not just slavery, but just now he's in prison. He's in a worse position than he was before. And just being in prison, being in this pit, as it's called, is horrible. It's not good. And you can imagine that every day would feel like a long day. I've been here too long, right? I remember I was watching a reality show the other day. It was called something like, I don't know, 90 Days In. But it's all about some individuals who had volunteered to go to prison for 90 days. And they get all kinds of training, and they're talked to, and they're counseled, and, you know, trained in how they should act, and all of that. And there's video cameras all over the prison. But it's still dangerous. And what I found interesting was that most of the people acted as if going to prison was going to be a piece of cake. It was going to be no big deal. You know, we'll do 90 days, not a big deal. Very interesting that the first day, not even a full day passed, most of those participants, most of those people were panicking. They were saying that they were scared. They were not sure if they could do it. I mean, just being in prison one day is a long time. Now listen, again, one day in prison is too long, especially when you're innocent. And Joseph is in prison, and he's there for a long time, and he's innocent. Do God's people sometimes suffer? Do God's people sometimes suffer unjustly? Yeah, absolutely, right? They do, and we've seen this already in the life of Joseph a number of times. Now, let's ask the question, though. Is it fair? Is it fair that Joseph is suffering like this? Is it fair that Joseph has been lied about and is now in prison, not just in slavery, but now he's in prison? Is it fair? Is it fair? No, it's not. But here's the thing. Here's the thing we need to get into our minds. God never promised us fair. He never said life was going to be fair. He never said, if you follow me, life will be fair. Life will be easy. He never said that. Was it fair that Jesus suffered and died for you when you were an enemy of God? Was it fair that Jesus suffered and died for me when I was an enemy of God? No. But thank God Almighty, he doesn't concern himself with what's fair. You know, sometimes people want to talk about justice. You know, I want justice. I want justice. Well, when it comes to God and his interaction with us, we don't want justice. We really don't. We don't want justice from God. We want grace and mercy. We don't want what's fair. We want grace and we want mercy. See, the reality is, again, God doesn't promise us a life of fairness. But he does promise us that he'll be with us, and he'll give us the ability to live the life he's called us to live. And one day, we won't get what's fair, but we will get eternal life. We'll get what we don't deserve. We'll get eternal life in a place where death and sin no longer reign, communing with God forever in a perfect relationship with him. It's not fair. It's not fair, but that's good. So we got to be careful when we think about God and we think about fairness and we think about what's happening. Things are not fair. Things are not fair. So who are the ones who have the dreams, right? Let's go back to the text. Well, we've got the baker, and we have the cupbearer. We've got the chief baker, we've got the chief cupbearer. And where did the dreams come from? They have these dreams, and where do they come from? Well, I would say they come from God. That God gives them these dreams. These dreams are prophetic. Now, why does God give these men these dreams? Well, he's using these men, and he's using these dreams that he might bless Joseph and the rest of his family. And as we've said many times before, ultimately what God is going to do with Joseph, his family, Jacob, all of them, is that he's going to bless the world through Jesus. When Jesus comes, he's going to bless the entire world. But he is trying to bless, at least in the immediate context, he's trying to bless Jacob and his family through Joseph and through these men and their dreams. So if that's true, let's ask the question, is God the one who is causing all of this to happen? I mean, is God making these servants do whatever it was that caused Pharaoh to put them in prison? Is he causing them to do evil, to get on the wrong side of Pharaoh? Is he causing Pharaoh to put these men in prison? Is he making Pharaoh do this? Well, I think we would say no, because humans have a certain amount of free will. We talk about that a lot of times. If God were orchestrating all of this, at the end of the day, we could say, why? Why go through all of this trouble? Why not just, make it easy? Part of the thing that's going on here is that God is working through the actions of people. People have a certain amount of free will. He's not controlling them like robots or something like that. What God is doing is he is using these events, he's using these situations to bring about good. And so Romans chapter 8, verse 28, passage we all know, would be, in my mind, very relevant here. It says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. See, God knows what Pharaoh's going to do. He knows what those men were doing. He knows that they were going to do wicked things, whatever they did, and he knows what Pharaoh's going to do with these men. He knows that eventually there'll be some major hardships in the world of their day. There's going to be famines and all of that that's coming up. And he's working out his goodwill and his good plan by and through these men and the things that they've done and the things that are going to go on in the world. So because God knows everything that's going to happen, he uses these men by revealing what's going to happen to them in a dream. Now, I believe that God is actively doing that, in the sense of God is actively giving these men these dreams. He's going to use these men. He's going to reveal to these men what's going to happen to them in their dreams, and Joseph can interpret those dreams. Now, what are the two dreams? Well, each dream is related to the individual. It's related to their work. There's some similarities and some differences between the two dreams. And of course, the dreams are about what's going to happen. Now, the cupbearer, the one who places the cup in Pharaoh's hand, very important role, very important position. This is the guy who keeps Pharaoh from being poisoned. You've got the cupbearer, that kind of thing. So the cupbearer, he has a dream, and in the dream he places the cup back in the hand of Pharaoh. He takes the grapes, he squeezes the grapes, and he puts it in the cup and he gives it back to Pharaoh. Now the baker has his bread and his baked goods and all of that, and he's carrying them on these baskets on his head. And the birds of the air come and eat the bread out of the top basket. And so Joseph asks them that next day, what's going on? Why do you guys look so miserable? And they say, well, we've had these dreams and we don't know what it means. And Joseph is going to give them the interpretation. Now, clearly God is the one who has given Joseph the ability to interpret dreams. And we saw this early on. God gives Joseph some dreams, and there's some interpretation that goes on with them. We mentioned this before. This is interesting that prior to Joseph, when God came to someone in a dream, it wasn't, it didn't need to be interpreted. It was pretty plain, pretty simple, pretty clear to them. There was no interpretation needed. But when it comes to Joseph now, there's this interpretation that has to take place. There's some obscurity, some strangeness to the dreams that need to be revealed or uncovered. And so God gives Joseph the ability to interpret these dreams. And so Joseph gives a good interpretation to the cupbearer. The cupbearer says, this was my dream. And Joseph says, basically, in 3 days, right? There's this 3. In 3 days, you're going to be restored. Now, the baker hears this. And he wants to, Joseph has given the cupbearer a good interpretation. So the baker now feels, okay, I'll let you know my dream. Hey, interpret my dream. Give me a good prophecy, right? So the baker says, here's my dream, 3 baskets. And again, the 3 is symbolic of 3 days. There's going to be 3 days and something's going to happen. Now, the cupbearer had a good interpretation. Well, when the baker lets Joseph know what his dream was, there isn't a good outcome. Joseph is going to interpret his dream, but at the end of those 3 days, the baker is going to be killed. His life's going to be taken, right? His life's going to be ended. Now, what might Joseph be tempted to do with the baker? Now think for a moment. What might he be tempted to do? Well, he might be tempted not to give him the correct interpretation. Or he might give him a partial interpretation. Or maybe even kind of hide the truth. Maybe lie. Not make the baker feel bad or afraid. After all, he only has a few days left. Why cause the baker any more trouble? Why have him live in fear? Why for those last couple days have him be full of anxiety and depression and anger and whatever else might be going on? There could be a temptation there for Joseph to not give him that proper interpretation, or just not interpret his dream at all. Now, what if Joseph hadn't given the baker the correct interpretation, or he had, maybe lied and give him a good one, or what might have happened there? Well, he would have been shown to be unreliable, right? He would not be a reliable interpreter. The cupbearer would have probably just blown it off and said, well, he said we both were going to have a good interpretation, that we both were going to be restored. Or, yeah, he said I was going to be restored, but he wasn't able to tell me what was going to happen with the baker, and the baker died, or something like that, right? And that's going to be important. It's going to be important in the future, but it's important that he tell the truth and that he give this interpretation. We can be tempted. We can be tempted to either lie or keep back some of the truth so that we don't hurt people's feelings, or for some kind of momentary happiness that we might receive ourselves, or that they might receive, the other person. We might be tempted to lie or hold back the truth, but we don't know what the future holds. And of course, we don't want to be seen as liars. We don't want to be seen as those who are unreliable or something like that. Now, that doesn't mean that we should go around brutalizing people, right? Being what's called brutally honest and just not care and attack people with the truth, because we can beat people up with the truth. We can. We don't want to be people who are brutalizing others with the truth. We don't want to be harsh. We don't want to be jerks. Now, I don't think that Joseph interpreted the baker's dream in that way. I don't think he was unkind. I don't think he was harsh or anything like that. But he did tell him the truth. And, sometimes that means that we have to tell people the hard truth. We need to speak the truth in love, but we need to speak the truth, right? So we need to speak the truth, but we need to speak it in love, in a way that is not brutalizing people. All right, so let's go back and ask the question. So what happens to the 2 servants? Well, one is killed and one is restored, just as Joseph said would happen. So what happens with Joseph, right? What happens with him? He tells the truth. He gives one a good interpretation, gives the other one a bad interpretation, but bad only in the sense that something bad was going to happen to the baker. So what happens with Joseph? Well, nothing. He's not remembered, and he's stuck in prison. I think it's interesting at the end. It says in verse 23, it says, "Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him." Very funny how people forget those maybe who have helped them out, and they quickly forget. And so that's what happens here. Joseph is forgotten in prison. And so what happened? Where's God in all of this? Where's God when the innocent suffer unjustly? Right? I mean, couldn't Joseph be thinking that? Would we be thinking that if we were in Joseph's situation? I mean, unjustly sold into slavery, unjustly sold into the house of Potiphar, unjustly put into prison under the captain of the guard in that prison. And here he asks, he pleads with this cupbearer, remember me. I'm unjustly here. And he forgets him. And he's there. Days turn into weeks, turn into months, turn into years. Who knows how long this has been? But he forgets him. He forgets him. Well, we know how long it is. 41 says after 2 whole years. We're not going to get into that tonight, but it's been years that Joseph is left in prison, forgotten. And so, where is God? Where is God in all of this? Where is God when the innocent suffer unjustly? I want to leave you with that. I want you to think about that this week. Contemplate that truth. Where is God? Where is God? Well, I pray that this has been a blessing to you, and Lord willing, we'll get back together again next week. God bless.